So where are you joining us from, by the way?
I live on the west side of San Francisco, out by the beach.
Okay, nice. How was that?
Oh, it's great. Well, actually, this time of year is the worst. It's
Uh-huh.
like can't see your hand in front of your face, soupy fog.
Oh,
But it's a
really?
nice day. Yeah, that never happens on July 4th.
So it's like summer is not the best time.
No, September, October, that's the best time.
Oh, really? Okay.
Like at the beach, are there beach goers in San Francisco? What's that like?
Sure, yeah, you wouldn't really go in the water unless you have a wetsuit, but
Yeah.
people come out here. Actually, there was this proposition that passed in the last election to close the Great Highway and turn it into a park. And it was very
Oh,
controversial. The people who live out here wanted it to be a road because of traffic and, they just are worried about getting their groceries and stuff. But everyone else in San Francisco is like, yeah, we just want to come and walk around there. So they shut the road down. And it's been pretty good, actually. Even I feel like even the people who are super against it are like, yeah, okay, this is kind of nice. There's often people out there, it's a good place to be.
was that related to COVID at all?
Yeah, that was when they first shut it down. And
Uh-huh.
then there was this compromise where it's open during the week and closed on the weekends, which that was fine too. I don't know. I was with all the residents. I was like kind of
Yeah.
opposed to it. And then it passed and I was like, you know what? I'm retroactively for this. I think it's
Yeah.
going to be good. And so I jumped on the bandwagon and it worked out.
It's funny because there's so many stories exactly like that all over the place. Because I lived in New York during COVID and they shut down a bunch of streets, and a lot of them are like now perma shut down, which is nice. They've like turned to really nice things. Now I live in Miami and there's a street that we love that's just all restaurants. Like it's just, and they fully settled in. I didn't know until recently that was used to be a normal road. Then COVID happened and they transformed it. So yeah, it's been nice. It's been nice having more like areas to hang out in. I don't know if any of that happened in the Ozarks, Adam.
Mm. There are no walkable areas in the Ozarks. I mean, you can walk, you just don't get to anything useful. You just kind of walk arbitrarily.
Walking for walking's sake. Yeah.
Yeah. I do that a lot, actually.
Yeah.
Adam, how long have you been at Anthropic? I know that you've got the React history. How long since you joined Anthropic?
Yeah, it's been a little over a year. Really exciting times. It feels like 10 years, but
Oh yeah.
that's plenty.
Did you join to like directly work on Claude Code, or like what was the situation?
Yeah. Well, I joined, when I saw GPT-3 and 3.5 especially, I
Mhm.
was like, this thing is going to be awesome for coding. I've got to work on that and I got to get closer to it. Like, I do not just want to be a user. I want to know how it gets made.
Mhm.
So I eventually, I joined this team at Anthropic called the Claudification team.
Mhm.
And the intention there was to accelerate the internal technical staff with AI. It was like part of the developer productivity team. So that's how I joined, and that's what I was originally working on. It just, the thing about like kind of putting an effort like that inside developer productivity is like, it's always like, hey, we can have all these neat whizzy things, or we could just fix CI, And like,
Right.
you end up just going to the bottom of these infrastructure things. Like I worked on like how to log the usage of Zed at Anthropic for like a month, which, like you actually really want to know that if you're really trying to
Yeah.
empower your staff. But it was also, man, it also really cured my Rust fanboy, my brief infatuation with Rust.
Yeah. It's funny because I never thought about any of those things because I mostly worked at like on my own stuff for like really small teams. But especially with a lot of this LLM stuff coming into like developer workflows, we've been talking to bigger companies and they're all really obsessed with trying to understand how their team is using this stuff better and having like analytics and metrics and better insight into those things. It makes total sense, but it's just something that I'd never been exposed to before.
Yeah, if you're going to spend as much as it costs to empower every dev with AI, you kind of need to prove that it's worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to ask you, 'cause Dax and I talk about this cycle we have where it's like some days or some weeks we're like, this is the future of everything. and it's going to change my job forever. And then there's like days where you just have a bad day with the LLM and you're like, F this, I'm never using it again. Do you, from your perspective, being inside of Anthropic, do you have a different perspective on that as a developer? Because you kind of like, you know something about the internal things going on in Anthropic, whether that's future roadmap or whatever. Like, do you have a different perspective, or do you feel like just every other dev where you're like, good days and bad days, I want this to be better, I know it's the future, some days it's just not there? I'm just curious if you have any thoughts.
Yeah, I listen to you guys religiously. So, of course, I know you guys, you talk about that a lot. And I just sit there shaking my head because, like, or nodding my head, I should say, because I feel the exact same way.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think there are a few different aspects to it. You know, like, one thing is, like, I've gone through all these little mini eras with technique. So, like at one point, my editor broke. And I didn't really fix it. You know what I mean? Like all the highlighting was broken, all that stuff. So I was like, I'll just
let me guess what editor you were using.
Okay, I don't want to throw anybody under the bus. I went back to Vim and it's like, okay, I know this works.
Yeah.
But anyway, it broke, and so I was like, oh, I'll just use Claude Code to do everything. You know what I mean? I'm like, oh, let's call this variable X instead of Y. You know, and like when you try to use the LM for that, you're doomed. Like, that is actually a terrible use of the LLM. Like, and I think hand finishing things is that's what I do now, at least.
Yeah.
And like, you know, and then you also just sort of realize, like, well, how big a chunk do you need? You know, like, I think so part of it, I think, is like, we are changing.
It's skill issues.
Yeah.
You're just being polite. But it is.
Skill issues is really true. And the skill is not like, oh, I know how to write a prompt. It's just like, I'm able to come to this with a fresh mind when a new model comes out, when a new feature comes out. You know, even like plan mode has kind of changed how I use Claude Code. So you really have to adapt quickly. And I think, you know, as someone who's always spent like hours and hours tweaking my Vim config, it's sort of a dream. You know, like I would prefer to only do the meta and not actually have to push anything in production. But
Yeah. It is fun. On one hand, it's been a lot because things change so quickly, and you have good days and bad days, but it is fun just because we're all just effectively just messing with our editors, which we all love to do. And that's effectively what all of this is. Just seeing how our workflows can change. I've been into it. And I think the part that I've enjoyed is whenever there's something new that's different than how I normally do things, I, like everyone, resist it to some degree because any kind of change is painful. But then something flips in my brain where I try to overuse it on purpose to see like what the extreme version of this is like. And in that process, you usually gain a good amount of insight. So I also did try to use LLMs to even do like simple edits, things that I could do in a few keystrokes with my keyboard. And surprised, I think I was surprised. I think it definitely wasn't great. Like, obviously using an actual editor is the right choice there. But I found a different kind of workflow where I was just queuing stuff up. Like, I was like going through a file, and like every little thing I would just queue up, and then I would go to the next thing instead of like getting it done. And I think in net that probably wasn't my favorite, but it was like a new workflow that I wouldn't have thought of before.
Yeah, one big thing that's like kind of the fad at Anthropic right now is like not to correct the LLM. So, you know, because the LLM doesn't see interruption from the user in training, really. And actually, you'll notice that like sometimes if you interrupt Claude enough, it'll actually hallucinate interruptions. Which is super annoying. You're like, no, keep going. You interrupted yourself, buddy. But like, you know, like that's a good example of one where like, then I sort of feel like I over rotated on that. I'm like afraid to update it, you know? So like, I don't know. It's funny just how much presence of mind it takes to like really make sure that like what you're trying is helping you, or, you know, to as you say, to like learn something from it and not just like fall into it.
Yeah, it's so when you say the fad is to not interrupt it, do you mean you start it over, or like what exactly do you mean by that?
I mean, like you give it a detailed prompt, you give it as much tooling as you can, you shout at it like, you must pass all the tests before you keep going.
Do not add
and then
comments.
You let it run. You know, what'd you say?
I said, do not add comments.
That one never works.
Doesn't help. No, still well. But you give it all your instructions up front, and then you just like kind of let it cook for like kind of you're trying to get it to go on its own for as long as you can, and then you come back to it and you like review the whole diff it's created, and you sort of give your feedback on it, and then you kind of move on to the next terminal window, rather than like the one thing I think about a lot is like there's the difference between it being awesome and it sucking is the difference between you sitting there watching the LLM do stuff while you do nothing, and the LLM doing stuff while you're doing something else. And then there's also this question of like, if the other thing you're doing is scrolling Twitter, is that good or bad?
I think we talked about that. Yeah, it's I think for me, my journey with this stuff was never gonna leave NeoVim. Like I just refused, no matter what tooling came out. I was just like, no, I can't leave my baby. And it eventually felt like, how long can I resist this? Because some of these tools look pretty powerful, and I got some of it inside NeoVim, like the tab complete through SuperMaven, things like that. But I was seeing Cursor, and I was like, man, am I just going to be forced to use it at some point because the productivity is so huge? And then Claude Code came out, and I think it was a good Trojan horse in that I was able to use it without like shifting anything about my editor. Like it was a separate thing that lived outside of it. But it also introduced a totally new workflow to me, where whenever I saw people using Cursor, it was like very active, and it was trying to augment you as the person writing code, which, some of the stuff is great, like the tab complete. I think it's great for that. But that never clicked for me properly. When the Claude Code came out, it showed me that there's this completely different thing where you can kind of fork your work in certain moments and hand something off to Claude Code while you continue to do other parts of it and then check back in on it later. That was a new workflow that I'd never considered at all. And that was kind of like the breakthrough for me, being like, oh, okay, now I see how I can incorporate this stuff in a much bigger way.
Same. The very first thing I did, this was the GPT 3.5. I built an integration in NeoVim. It would open a buffer on the right, by the way. That is where the window belongs. You would open a buffer, and just because Vim, it's so easy to move text back and forth, and this was 3.5 did not really have tool calling. People started doing that thing of like respond only with the new program or whatever, but it didn't work that well. So I would just use it for code understanding. I would just like paste in a big function and be like, hey, how could we refactor this? And honestly, there's something I kind of miss about that. Like that was like a golden, like I learned how to do Kubernetes from that.
Right.
And I feel like that was like my golden era of like actually learning things from the LLM. I've noticed, we talk about like these different fads. Lately, I've noticed I've gotten really lazy. I really trust, especially Opus. Like I overtrust it. You know what I mean? Like I'll go back into the code. I'll be like, who wrote this? What is this even doing? It's like, oh, I committed that PR yesterday.
Yeah. I think I also had a phase where I tried some of the NeoVim tools that kind of brought some of the functionality in editor, and they like I kind of used them. Like it was nice to be able to select some code and be like, oh, refactor this or add this functionality to it. But ultimately, it just felt a little too clunky to really stick as something that I did consistently. Kind of like a nice to have here and there. But yeah, like I'm really into this whole thing. I think that we've talked about this before, but this mental model where you have kind of like a dumb idiot sitting next to you with their own laptop, and you can just give them stuff, and they're not messing with what you're doing. You can still be doing other stuff, and that separation is nice because they are kind of dumb, and you want to be able to do this other stuff while they're doing their thing.
Yeah, but like, like I'll just be like, hey, can you just write a doc on how the installer works?
Yes.
And like, that's just incredible.
I love that.
I love it for that.
Like we use a lot of mono repos, and just having like a web project with like MDX files for the docs in the same mono repo and being like, hey, document this package's whatever feature in the web project, and it just writes the MDX file. It's amazing. I love it for that kind of stuff.
I agree.
Yeah.
I guess it is like a continuum though. Like Dak's talking about this workflow, and it's the Claude Code kind of workflow that you guys pioneered, where the human is very in the loop. but there are like so many bets being made too on the completely asynchronous, the Jules, the whatever. I don't remember all the names of them. Devin. Yeah. The kind of like give it a problem and then it comes back with a PR. I guess Anthropic's not really doing that today, right? Is that, do you view like some point in time where the models just get so good that we don't need to be in the loop? That's one of my fears, is like, it's not like I'm going to lose my job thing, just like I really enjoy this whole Claude Code kind of workflow, and I hope that it's here to stay. But I wondered, as Anthropic, do you have a different perspective being inside Anthropic? Like, is this temporary?
It feels transitional. I mean, just the fact that I feel like every week I come to my work and it feels a little different, you know? So obviously things are changing really fast. I would say, you know, like one measure that we talk about at Anthropic is how long does the agent work autonomously? And I think everyone's goal is to increase that number. So that is where we're headed. It conflicts with something I've learned, though, as like having been a software developer for a pretty long time, which is that like the hard part is always figuring out what you're trying to do and why. You know, like it's always been pretty easy to like poop out a PR. The question is like, you know, is this actually a feature that is going to help? And, you know, it's amazing in retrospect when you look back at like a year of what a team did, how little of it has actually helped at all. You know, so there's part of me that really is dubious that like a 3-sentence prompt will be enough to make anything better. I'm really curious to see how that plays out, honestly.
That's how I feel when I see these people. I don't know if you've seen the Twitter posts where somebody's got like 16 Claude Code instances running in parallel, and like how do you have that much stuff that needs done that you actually can keep it going? I just like, to me, they're just spitting out garbage, and it's like, look how fast it can run. I don't know. That whole thing just kind of.
Oh my god, that whole world is. You guys rant about that a lot, but I find it kind of amusing because it's pretty clear. Like, well, obviously you're not doing anything except posting on Twitter. Like, if
the main one I can think of, he's like, ignore my mom in the background, and that's just so perfect. It's like perfect explanation.
Exactly.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw my post the other day, but I was like, 95% of my energy goes to figuring out what the hell we should be doing, and then 5% goes to coding. And now with AI, it's like 96% and then 4%. So it's definitely better, but like the agony of work is always what should we be doing? Why should we be doing it? Should we be doing this thing or the other thing? And it's cool that I can spend more time on that stuff. And I think the part that's a little bit unclear for me is a lot of the process of figuring that out is trying stuff and is doing stuff. And I wouldn't say that the LLMs take away from that, because I can think of discrete examples where it's exactly the opposite. I had a situation the other day where I had 2 totally different ideas for how like a certain like UX flow could work. And in the past, I would sit and think really hard about which one makes more sense, and I'll commit to that and we'll build that. But then now I just had both built, and then I tried both, and one was obviously worse than the other. Once it was implemented. And in the past, I would have never been able to do that. So that process of exploring still exists. But I will say some of that is literally doing the coding as well, when you're trying to figure out like architecturally, how should something be structured? What patterns are good? What patterns are annoying? But yeah, I have a hard time imagining how I could be effective solely from like opening GitHub issues and watching them get completed.
Yeah, well, I totally agree. I have this theory actually that like if we use these things right, we could make the code a lot better. You know, everyone talks about how like AI makes code worse, but one big difference I've noticed is like I'm much less attached to any given approach because I didn't do that much work to get it going. You know, so I totally agree. And also, if you try 2 approaches, you know, you just sort of look at the PR and you just look at like how many files were changed, or, you know what I mean? Like macro things. And you can kind of tell one of these is going to go in more easily than the other one will. And then often what I'll do is I'll like try a few different ways, and then I'll be like, oh, this is a way to do it. And then I'll go back, I'll reset everything, and I'll have Claude be like, hey, write an MD file about how we're going to do this one. And then we'll kind of do it step by step together. Yeah,
the step by step together is also interesting. I've also found that I haven't used this for programming as much, but for generating other things, I've had it, instead of giving it a prompt and being like, generate the thing I need, I will give it the prompt and I'll say, ask me questions step by step to figure out what to generate. And it does such a good job of going back and forth with me and then pulling out the information it needs. So some of those workflows are super interesting. And then the thing you were saying about improving code, not totally related, but Adam, did you see that issue that somebody opened today about how they were like, the issue title was improve code? Did you see that one?
Yeah. They pasted like an LLM gave them a review of our code. They just pasted it as an issue.
There's a file in our code base that's really bad, but it's bad because it's the most complex part where I understand the least. So I'm like letting it become a mess as I understand what we need to do before we refactor it. Someone clearly prompted the LLM with something like, provide an argument as to why this code is horrible, because it uses that phrasing a lot. It's like, it would be justified to say this code is horrible because, and then it like breaks it down. And then it like, and this person's opened this issue with this like several paragraphs of why this code sucks. And it was just like, you should improve it. And I was like, are you even a user of this app? Like, what, you went and did this? Like, why? So I was annoyed. And I replied being like, I replied calmly explaining why it's in that state. And then I threw in, once you get more experience, like this will make more sense to you.
Nice.
And I closed the issue. Like, what? Man. But yeah,
the good and the bad. We get the good and the bad with LLMs.
And open source.
And open source. Yeah.
Great combination.
I'm seeing a lot more of the AI content stuff, or just like search results and like Twitter interactions, just all kinds of random places that I so clearly this is not a real person. That's getting more and more annoying. I hope that we figure out a way to solve that. I don't know. That's not your problem, Adam. I don't know. Stuff on this.
I worked at Facebook, so like I'm incredibly paranoid and suspicious of basically everyone. I just assume everyone else is an LLM. That's a good starting point.
Love it.
One of the most frequent comments we get in any video we do is everyone asks if Adam is AI gen.
They say I'm a skinwalker. I never heard of this stuff until I got on the internet.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. I have this thought all the time where I'm like, a year ago, if you told me how much time I'd be spending thinking about whether a reply was AI generated or not, I wouldn't have believed you. But it's crazy how much of it exists, and it's in a format that isn't immediately detectable sometimes, or like there's something in it that triggers something else in your brain, so you don't think that's an LLM. Like it'll compliment you or it'll ask you a question, and immediately your brain is like in the mode to want to engage. And there's people that have been quote unquote people that have been consistently replying to my posts for a while now, where I only put it together that was an LLM because they were replying so consistently. They were replying to every single post and very quickly after I posted it. But other than that, I maybe would have thought that they were real. So yeah, it's crazy how much of my energy is going into figuring that out.
Well, yeah, I mean, again, starting with Facebook, I sort of noticed how the technological limitations and implementations really influence the culture. Like obvious examples like 8-bit, right? Like that's a whole style, even when you have plenty more than 8-bit. You're rendering 4K HD, but it looks like 8-bit.
Right.
And I feel like AI now has really suffused the culture, like that kind of hallucinating, dreamy, there was like that little like retro futuristic time we had that, when Midjourney was really good at that. It's interesting. I guess what I'm saying is like the people start to imitate the AI, I think too, is like another aspect of that.
Yeah. Yeah. I had this crazy experience once where I somehow ended up on some weird Twitter space, and I'm pretty sure it was a person acting like an LLM, where they would respond with weird delays, but the responses were like very good. And the person was claiming that they were like an unreleased model or something, but ultimately was an actor at the end of the day. And I'm like, this is so circular and crazy.
So
I can't
confusing.
believe this type of stuff is happening.
Then you go try to explain that to like your normal friend, and they're like, what are you talking? Like a person pretending to be an AI, what are you talking?
Yeah.
Well, so that's another thing. So as much as every single conversation we have, everything we see, everything we read is all about like coding and coding with LLMs. And obviously people that are programmers by trade are like more plugged into this stuff than the average person. despite that, there's still so many people that have not tried using LLMs for programming at all. Still, it's still like such a small percentage of people that have tried it or incorporate it into their workflow. Do you guys feel the same way? I mean, you're like more in the heart of, you know, everyone around you thinking about it, but do you get glimpses of how big the world actually is?
Oh yeah, well, you know, set aside like all the regular people who aren't programmers who haven't touched this stuff. Although I feel like that's actually flipping. Like two of my best friends are like a doctor and a lawyer, and a year ago they were like, these things are not useful, and now they're like, they send me their like deep research on, you know, our backpacking weekend or whatever. But for programmers, yeah, I mean, you know, with Claude Code, we end up talking to a lot of enterprises, and like there, you know, there are people who are like, well, our staff is really skeptical of AI. And I just have to suppress my feeling of like, are you kidding me? Like, well, how could you be skeptical? Like, you've got to try this thing, or, you know, I mean, it's got problems, but like, how could you not be curious about this?
Yeah.
It's always amazing. I mean, the divide between like our little circles on the hyper internet Twitter crowd and like normal devs. Because I work with a lot of normal devs, like my normal job. And it's just not on the radar, like, or it's just like not good enough, or they have some perception of it that it's not good enough. And yeah, there's a disconnect.
The thing that's always weird for me, and I've observed this with every tech and also building stuff for developers, we often get this question of, oh, like, why should I try it? Or like, to me, it feels like people want a mountain of explanation and research and argument before they even try it. And in my head, I'm just like, you can just try it, you know? Like, why do you have to be skeptical of LLMs? You can try it and you'll probably land somewhere in between, like most people do. But that always confused me. Maybe they're really busy with other stuff and they want to like disrupt any of their workflows, but I can never make an argument for any new tech because, you know, you should just try it and see how it applies to you.
Yeah, you know, having worked, again, like, with a lot of different engineers over time, I just try to only work with people who write code because they love to. And those people love these tools, you know, because like, again, it's just like, it's fascinating. Like I've programmed computers for 20 years, but now I can talk to them. Are you kidding me? Like that's insane. You've got to use that. I think there are plenty of people who just, they go to their work, they get their tickets done, they go home, they just don't even think about it, you know?
But it's funny, even for those people, like, it's even better.
They'd be happier. Totally.
But I get what you're getting at. There's a level of reflecting on like the meta that not everyone has the habit of doing, which I guess is alien to me, but I've seen it enough where people do need to be given, like, again, I just always imagine like a large book report. Like I feel they're asking for like a big book report explaining all the reasons and all the pros and cons before they'll even dip a toe. But again, just weird for me because it costs nothing.
Okay, I gotta take us off the rails a little bit. If you guys hate this conversation and you want to pull us back, just pull us back because this is a little personal. But it's so top of mind, I can't not say it. Do you think these devs that aren't really interested in the meta, that aren't on Twitter, and that aren't all these things, the ones who just like check into their job, do their work, and then go home, do you think they're happier? Not in like the I know that was a dumb question. Do you think like they're more present with their families? Do you think they're more like I have this issue where I'm very like entrepreneurial, whatever, ambitious in life, and like I go very hard at programming and everything I do, and I'm very online and all these things, and I worry that it's maybe like, I don't know, taking me away from the people I love. I'm not as present as I could be. I'm sorry, Adam.
Don't be sorry. I think about stuff like this. I love that question. That's great. Yeah. My first answer is like, no way. How could they be happier? Because my guess would be they approach their family and their hobby and everything else the same way they approach their job, which is like they walk through it. Like I think to be engaged, you know, is like, it's also pain, right? Like it's quite painful to sort of realize like, man, I spent a whole day arguing with the LLM. I should not have done that. Or I spent the whole day like, kind of being mad at my little kid, even though they couldn't help it. Those are like the same thing, I think.
Wow. Okay, you didn't know you were coming to give me therapy, but that was amazing. You actually helped me in my real life, so thank you.
Yeah.
I'm going to take this one home. Okay.
The other point I'll make is I think it's easy to forget the bad parts about a life lived that way. So I think the upside is you can check out. There's like an ability to check out. But the problem is you can't check out 100% of the time. There's times of your life that you have to be checked in, for 8 hours a day, whatever it is. And most people, when you talk to them about their job, every minute is just misery. It's just, my boss is being annoying. I have to do this thing. I don't think it's useful, but I have to do it anyway. It's like they feel like they're working on stuff that has no point. So it's like enduring misery for 8 hours so you can escape for the others. And I think most people, unfortunately, are in situations like that. And I think the thing I easily take for granted is every minute of my day now, I feel like I'm like spending it the best I could possibly be spending it. And parts of it are hard and painful, of course, but there's no chance I would ever get burned out because I'm not doing stuff I don't believe in. But there was a point in my life where that wasn't the case. And I remember what that was like. And I remember like always being annoyed and so many cycles in my brain, just thinking about how stupid my like company was for a certain reason, or like my team was for a certain reason. And that all faded. And I haven't been in that situation for years now. And that like shows up in other parts of your life, right? It doesn't just stay at work.
Yeah, what Adam helped me realize is, man, this conversation is going all over the place. Just helped me realize that like I've always had the work part checked, where I'm happy with my work and I'm excited about my work. I can't hardly sleep because I'm excited to wake up and work. I've always had that part. It's the interpersonal connectedness, relationships that I've not been so good at. Like I'm a present dad, but I'm not so emotionally available. Anyway, you've made me realize that I can go hard at that too. I just haven't learned how to do it yet. Like I go hard at everything in life and I just don't know how to do that part yet. So I'm going to figure that part out too. And like, if I were somebody who just checked in, maybe I'm just kind of a slothful person and I wouldn't do those things to better myself on that area. So anyway, I'm better.
Yeah.
Thank you. You fixed me.
That's awesome.
Wow.
Man. That's so real for me. My kids are older, but I struggled with that when my kids were younger for sure.
It's tough.
I've gotten better though. As you say, you can apply yourself, and even figuring out how to apply yourself to that is one of the greatest challenges.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm about to have my first kid, so I am thinking about some of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I'm excited for you, Dax. I'm expecting it to humble you a little bit.
Yes.
It won't. Everyone, literally, there's like hundreds of people hoping for that, and
I think we're all rooting for that, Dax.
Yeah, I've already told everyone, no matter what happens, I'm just gonna be more annoying. So you guys need to give up hope.
I gotta say, this is just like for anyone who notices. I'm noticing. I've talked to Dax 150 times on this podcast. Dax's voice is even different, and he's like lounging because his neck is hurt. And you may not have wanted to say like you're this crippled person right now, but I can tell you're like your voice is different. Like
my voice is quavering. It's weird. So this morning after my run, I literally bent down to pick something up, and I turned my neck at the same time, and something just like popped in the back. And it's been really painful, and like it's affecting the way I speak. It's pretty crazy.
And you're like,
I'm in a lot of pain.
You're laying back like this.
I'm like trying to find positions that are not painful. So I've just ruined my weekend.
I'm not for that at all. That sucks.
Well, I was thinking, I'm glad I don't have a kid yet, because like I have to like hold a baby and do all that stuff right now. That'd be pretty hard.
Oh, geez, yeah. So Claude Code's like kind of taking off. I don't know. We haven't really talked about like the rise of Claude Code. I feel like I don't know what chart it was I saw, but like it's definitely exploding, especially on Twitter. Like I feel like a lot of people does it just come down to like I don't want to use VS Code? Is that it? Is it just like people that don't want to use an editor baked into their AI thing?
I'm not sure. I think like the growth has been absolutely insane. Like it's like 300% usage increase in the last 4 weeks.
Wow.
This kind of stuff that you just don't really see. 90% of the code, like within Anthropic, it's even really taking off. Like, our team, like almost all of the code is written with the help of the LLM. I think like a couple things. First of all, the new models, the 4 models, are much better. You know, and it's funny because like you use them at first and you're like, this isn't that much better. It's not like it's so much smarter, but just being a little more steerable and a little more, you know, I had this amazing experience with Opus where I kind of gave it an ambiguous prompt and it came back and it was like, wait a sec, do you mean A or B? And I was like, oh, I've never seen that from the model before. That's like a new behavior. So I think the new models really unlocked something new. And in some ways, I think Claude Code is just the easiest way to get at those things. You know, you like bring your own subscription and you, especially if you sign up for the max plan, it sort of feels like all one thing. Whereas with these other things, you have to like plug your keys in and it's just like one extra step. I think, yeah, I can't quite explain though why Claude Code has been so popular, especially there are other good options out there for sure. But I think like a lot of it is the new model.
Yeah. Do you just default to Opus? This is a question I have for an Anthropic engineer. Do you default to Opus? Ever use Sonnet? Like, is there a reason?
No, actually, I'll tell you, I joined Anthropic in part so I could have unfettered access to the top model. I was like, I don't pay anything, but I'm not getting rate limited. So now I get my own inference tier. It's awesome.
That's awesome. But there's not like, I haven't quite figured out with programming. Dax uses Sonnet. I mostly use Opus. And I don't know if there's material difference. Like, I don't know if either one of us has got a sense for
I'm
if we
very
should use one or
happy.
the other.
Like, I'm a very happy user with just Sonnet. I think I will switch to Opus occasionally, but yeah, I'm sure Opus is better, but I'm surprised at how satisfied I am just using Sonnet.
You know, Sonnet is just as good as at Opus for coding tasks, I would say. And also, you know, when we actually have a horrible problem trying to tell internally if one model's better than another. Like, that's actually much harder than it sounds.
Oh,
the users will generally pick the shorter answer that was delivered faster.
Right.
And especially because we can't really do like long trajectories with one model versus the other. It's like kind of one tool prompt usually. And it's really hard to tell often what the difference, you know, they're very similar responses. So I just stick to Opus. One flavor of Twitter maxing that I really hate is like, I use this model for planning and that model to write Java and this model.
Did you see my post yesterday?
Get a life, dude. Yeah. So I can just keep it pinned on Opus. That's fine with me. But you know, Sonnet's really good too. They're both better than Sonnet 3.7.
Yeah, sure.
That guy was a jerk. It would just like break your test and write stupid comments. Like, annoying.
So let's talk a bit about the form factor of Claude Code, which is all in the terminal. What are your thoughts on that? Do you see this as like just like a nice angle you guys found, or is this like a form factor you kind of are betting on?
I think it's fundamental. And actually I think the fact that like it's in the terminal interactively is almost like a stepping stone to it being a much more composable Linux utility. You know, like the thing I've always wanted is kubectl list pipe Claude. What's wrong here, or kubectl describe or whatever. And actually it's surprising how we've all leaned hard into coding, but like it's been harder to crack like some of these SRE things. There's some great new products coming, but it hasn't quite happened yet. Ultimately, I think the fact that you end up typing into the terminal and viewing diffs in the terminal it's kind of neither here nor there. You know, it's fine. But the real power is that this can run anywhere you have a prompt. And for me, you know, the fact that I can run this inside a Docker container, or I can easily, like, I run it on a Pi Zero, you know, that I connect to using Mosh. That's where I think that's what I'm really excited about with these going back to the terminal.
Yeah. It's funny because I think that's how we saw it too. We're like, this is just so flexible. There's no excuse someone would have to not use this, no matter what their workflow, what their environment. on your computer, on a server, in a GitHub CI thing. I think that's like the brilliant part about packaging it in this way. The other funny thing I've seen is there's, especially with Claude Code blowing up as it has, there's been a few like big posts where people were like, I don't get it. Like, why do people like doing stuff in their terminal? Like, it's like, how would you ever prefer that over a UI? And I think if Claude Code wasn't growing as much as it was, I would like look at those posts and be like, that's a good point, because maybe this isn't as mass market as it is. But in the face of people saying that and it growing so much, there's like a more interesting thing that happens, which is clearly something counterintuitive is happening that people aren't getting, but it's still clicking with a bunch of people. So I love seeing that. It's like a good sign that something is really working when people are confused as to why it is working. Yeah.
A part of me thinks too, like when I open VS Code, almost always by accident, like I just sort of feel like this thing has gone over some kind of critical threshold. Right. Like the fact that we find ourselves in this place where there are no viable IDEs, I wonder if that fuels this a little bit too. Mm-hmm. Like it just, everything inside VS Code to me, it turns me into this like consumer, which is like the opposite of how I want to feel when I'm programming the computer.
Right. Yeah. It's in one of these posts, someone took a screenshot of, I think it was Cursor. They're like a terminal could never recreate all this. And I was looking at the screenshot. I'm like, that looks crazy and overwhelming. And there's so much stuff going on. Well, one, the terminal could recreate it, but like, I don't think I want to,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, I mean, going more on this form factor. So you probably obviously seen the stuff we're doing with open code. We're taking it in a more extreme direction of like, how far can we push all the tricks you can do in the terminal, given like the years we've spent doing tricks in the terminal with terminal.
too many years.
How did you do that thing where you figure out the theme? I was so impressed. I haven't yet looked at that. How you did that?
I don't remember how it like matches your system theme.
Yeah.
Oh, so like a system theme is just your terminal is just remapping the standard set of colors to other colors. Yeah, so as long as we render using the standard colors, it'll show up right. Oh. Yeah.
The ANSI 0 to 15, basically. I guess now up to 255 you can customize in most terminals. So if you just use those colors,
it tends to work. Okay.
Yeah. So this has been fun for us because we're trying to like see how much we can do. We already know what the ceiling is. It's like NeoVim exists and it can do quite a lot. A lot of this is just like kind of inching towards that direction. I get the sense with Claude Code that's not like your interest at all. But yeah, I'd kind of love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, sure. There are a couple things that I think are really interesting about the terminal form factor that I do lean into. And then what you guys do is amazing, but it's like not really what we're after. So I think the first thing that's interesting about the terminal is the concurrency model, because on the web, you can have these like sort of threads of processes that run completely unsynchronized. You know what I mean? Like a modal over or like a window over here has an async process. And then another like divided window has its own async process. And those things never have to come together, and they often don't, and it's confusing as hell, because like they're event based, and they actually they actually don't really make sense that they're running completely not concurrently. So one thing that's really nice about the terminal is like you do all this concurrent stuff, but then you ultimately have to come back to one prompt. So you get this like really thick braiding of like concurrent tool calls and all this stuff where you're trying to pack it all in, and then it all has to stop when you take input from the user. So I think you actually end up building a lot more sophisticated concurrency that way, because you have these like stop points that are easy to reason about. And then there's a related thing that we've noticed, which is like just simplifying the UI enough so that we can show it in a few lines of the terminal has forced us to do so many other good things, design, constraints breed good design. And the terminal is such a constraint that way. That actually really makes me happy.
Yeah. I lose
Yeah.
sleep over vertical space in a terminal. Like there's just it feels like there's never enough vertical space. It's so constrained.
That's
Yeah.
right. And also with ink, if you try to re-render too much of it, you get all this flickering and stuff. You have like 5 lines effectively you can update.
Yeah, it's like a footer that's live and everything else is static. Yeah, I mean, I also enjoy the constraints. I think there's such basic things like you can't have different font sizes. So if you want to show emphasis or highlight things, you can only do that through colors or bolding. And at first it feels like that this is too limited, but then you realize you can actually do everything you want to do. You're forced to do it in a better way. And now that makes me feel like, man, I think web apps should all just be one font size.
So honestly,
Totally.
Yes. So when we did the terminal website, David, our amazing designer at Terminal, just said like, let's make it like the terminal, all the fonts the same size. So the entire terminal website, all the pages on the terminal website, it's all one font size. And it just feels so good to build as a developer where you don't have to think about like, what size is this one? Like, I know it's a muted color, but like how much smaller? And like, you don't think about it at all. You just literally use the same. It's the best. I wish every website could be designed like that.
It looks great too. Like it's actually like the perfect aesthetic for right now.
Yeah. So we do go a little bit crazier, but even despite that, there's still so many constraints that we have to think about. I mean, we just had a situation this week where Adam worked on a feature and it didn't feel exactly right. And you have this moment of feeling like there's no way we can make this work. Like we're just screwed. But then inevitably something does emerge and you're like, okay, there's a better way to go about this. And something clicks. Oh, we were missing this. This thing is important. We can restructure it in this way. It always shows up.
There's so fewer patterns to draw from. So it's like discovering all the time. Like there's so many web patterns that there's an answer to every problem. And like you do that thing and it's just boring. With the terminal, it feels so much more uncharted. I know people have done some crazy stuff in terminals, but you run into a situation where there's this UX you need to provide and there's no cookie cutter answer. You have to like make it up. It's just so fun.
Yeah. I think also balancing, because we are still trying to make these tools something that a lot of people can use. Obviously a NeoVim user like is all excited about all the different hotkeys and they're going to like bind a hotkey for every little action. But it's very easy to make features hidden by accident because they're under these complex things that most people aren't going to discover. So yeah, balancing both of that of being like, we care about power users, but we also care about easy adoption. It's definitely like a very challenging product task to take on, but yeah, it's really fun. It's like the right level of challenge for us.
Yeah, I think it's fun too. I mean, the one thing I would say, like, we found a way to deal with everything except discoverability. That is the thing that just kills us. You know what I mean? Like, I see all these projects where it's like, oh, I made Claude Code do this, and it's like, no, we already have that feature, you guys. You know?
Yeah.
You're like, it's hard. I built something to hit the enter key and all this. It's like, actually, we have a -p flag. It does exactly what
Yeah, it's funny because someone asked us the other day for a tutorial and we're like, what do you mean you want a tutorial? Like what does that mean? But then I thought about it more. I'm like, yeah, we have a lot of features and I can see how if you don't read through all the help menus in the docs, like you're not gonna see that. Which I guess like the NeoVim world, that's how it all works, right? There's all these people that make great content explaining things that aren't obvious. But yeah, as like someone working on a product, you hate when stuff is hidden.
Is it any different than when you worked on React? Like, did people build worse versions of built-in hooks and stuff that like you guys have these features already, but people build their big machine on top, not even knowing because they don't read the docs? Just a lot of people just don't read the docs. It's the same devs that just clock in and they don't love their families. Those ones.
Yeah, that's funny. No, React was like completely different. Like actually the whole game with React was getting people to build stuff on top of React. So, and it was open source, and like we really wanted 90 different combo boxes because that's how you end up with the best combo box.
Yeah. It's the library versus app thing. Claude Code is an app. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was
You should go. You should go.
Okay. I was just going to say, it is like, I wanted to bring up open code because I've been obsessed with this whole idea, this whole concept of terminal-based coding assistants, it was very awkward to bring it up. I don't know. I'd be curious, Adam, like you've seen we're working on this. How do you feel about us working on this? I don't know. I don't know what I'm asking.
Guys, I love it. I think it's awesome.
Let's go.
We talked about, like, when we were shipping Claude Code for the first time, we talked about making it open source. And, I love open source. I did it for a long time, but I really felt like it was not the right thing for Claude Code, because I feel like the first and top voted PR or issue for the open source version of Claude Code would be like, give us access to other models. We are never going to do that. So, so the fact, like, having an open version of this with an open router, kind of model selector makes perfect sense to me. And, it's just so obvious. Like, this is huge. Like, what we're all doing is so big that we all need to work on it. There's like plenty of value to capture, and there's plenty of like totally slightly different takes that actually totally change the inflection of how you go after this. Even the fact that, like, vibes wise, we're like a lot more in line, like you can jump in and out of Claude Code. You guys use alternate screen buffer. Yeah. And that actually, like, that is a completely different feel, even though they're both AI terminal agents.
Yeah. I feel like there's not, are there other people doing what we're doing with the alt screen thing? Because I feel like there's like 8 exact Claude Code copies. Like, even the big companies that are rolling out their thing,
awkwardly similar.
They look like, so much like Claude Code. What is the
similar
deal?
To the point where I'm like, this, like, I feel like it even has the same like behaviors where I'm like, is it literally just like ripped from Claude Code?
I'm with you on that. It's sort of like, did you just like have like write a prompt after have Claude write a prompt after using it or something like that? Like why
create a Claude Code
all the same technology decisions? It's crazy.
It's nuts.
It's the exact same libraries, like everything. It's like it wasn't thought from scratch. So that signals to me like they did it because they felt like they had to have a product in this shape. It's not something they're like passionately pursuing. And I've always found the Anthropic products in general to be very good. I feel you guys are like a very good product company where I think you guys ship a little slower than some. I mean, Claude Code was before everyone else, but I've noticed this with like using Claude on web. Stuff tends to come out like a little more baked, and I appreciate that. I feel like I stopped using ChatGPT because their interface just became a crazy mess of like toggles and selectors, and I don't even know what's going on anymore. So I've always liked, like, I can tell there's like a good product sense at the company. But some of these other tools, like, it just feels like someone was forced to do it. It's like the immediate vibe I get from them.
Well, thanks for that. Boy, I gotta say, it's pretty hard to know how to drive a product org attached to an AI research lab. Because it always feels like, man, we're not doing enough, to elicit the frontier capabilities with new products, there are things right at the frontier that is like, how do you unlock that for product? And like memory is a good example. That's an area where I feel like OpenAI is maybe ahead of Anthropic a little bit in their product.
I turned that feature off very quickly.
Yeah, I mean, it's also a little freaky. Some people are like, I love that it knows me. I'm like, that is so weird that it knows me, But yeah, like, it's just a huge challenge, and it all moves so quickly that, like, some of the things you think, even just like the sort of product development cycles that we're used to have to change because the underlying technology moves so fast. Yeah.
The thing you were saying earlier about Claude Code not being open source, I think a lot of people try to like form they kind of say some kind of criticism around that. I think so like our stuff is open source, but we don't really run it like a pure open source thing. We have a very strong and opinionated way of how we want to build this product, and there's a lot of features that are going to be popular and requested that we're just not going to implement. And the only reason we're open source is because we have this like long tail of supporting all these different providers and plugins and stuff like that. Like, we do need the community support for that. I think people underestimate. It's very difficult to when it's like a product, like an app like this, running it like a pure open source project. It's like a lot to commit to and still expect the results to be good. I think people really underestimate that. So I think Claude Code not being open source or not run like an open source thing that makes total sense to me.
Yeah, we could talk about this a lot, I'm sure, but like working on React for as long as I did, I think there's a lot of open source projects where it's like, yeah, you can look at the source, but like committing to React at this point, like it's very hard to do. Like even if you wanted to, it's like extremely abstract, and you basically need to know someone on the team to get your PR through. I think there's something to be said for like, hey, you can look at our source. That's a certain kind of open source that I would say you guys are mostly interested in. You're right, though. The great thing about open source is like, oh, someone wants to run it on Arch on a, like ARM processor or whatever.
We just got the Nix PR. Someone working as a Nix package.
Nix. Yeah. Those Nix people, they have lots of complaints about how Claude Code works.
Yeah.
But I mean, to your guys' credit, you look at OpenAI, who they open source. I guess Gemini's open source too, but they open source the Codex thing, Codex CLI, like immediate PR to rewrite it in Rust. Have they even emerged from that? Like they're still in the weeds rewriting it in Rust, I think. I don't know if anyone uses it.
I looked at their usage numbers too. They're below ours, and we launched like 3 weeks ago. So it's I don't think it's really sticking with anyone. Yeah.
Exciting times. I love this space. It's just like we're all programmers. Like as a programmer, there's something so invigorating about working on something that feels like you're helping shape the future of your field that you've worked for 15, 20 years in. Like it's just such I don't know. It's not like I'm solving climate change, but it's like it's a tier below that in terms of purpose. You know what I mean? Like there's like things that would be purpose that like the whole world benefits from. And there's like selfishly, my career could change completely over the next 5 years. And I want to be part of that. I don't want to just sit back and watch it happen to me. So it's very invigorating. I don't know if you guys feel that way.
I feel the same way, Adam. And one thing I think about is like we talk about distillation from one model to another, but there's this other thing happening, which is like the distillation of all of this human knowledge and wisdom into the models and the tools that use them. And, like for me, transferring what I know and believe about software engineering, and also transferring just some of the love I feel like, with your product, with Claude Code, with any good product, what makes it good is like, it tastes good. It's like a dish that you cook. I know you guys both cook. Like you can just taste the love in it, and something that was just made by the guy who's clocking in 9 to 5 is just not that good. And those products are the ones that win. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like the timing is also so great. My personal timing, I feel like I finally know enough about my field, how the world works, how things work. And then like something exciting is happening where I've been alive for things like that before, but I was just like too stupid to really work on the right thing. So now I'm really excited because I feel like, okay, everything is finally lining up. I can actually, take part in this in the way that, I've seen other people be able to take part in previous shifts in the past. So yeah, really fun times.
I feel lucky. I feel like this is my second go round. I really thought bringing functional programming to UI was gonna work, and it really did. And now I get to do this AI thing all over again. Yeah. I feel very blessed.
Oh wow, yeah, the React thing. Like you've basically been part of the last shift. It's like there's the broad tech shifts like the internet and mobile, but like within programming, you would say AI changing everything right now. The last thing that really changed everything was probably React. So you've kind of like rode both those trains, right? I mean, like
it feels that way. I mean,
that's
as
a very
big
web
as React
developer
was, AI's way bigger. Like this thing is a tidal wave, and we just are starting to feel the water go out. Yeah.
Yeah. Just having done this type of stuff for years, you can immediately feel that because when we put stuff out in this part of the world, the response is insane. Like we've had success before, but this is like so different. It's like hitting so many nooks and crannies that we never were able to touch before. And it just is reminding me how massive the world is. And when you build something that potentially every single person could use, it just feels totally different. man, very fun. We're all very overstimulated right now. I think it's having this funny effect where I personally have been working less on the weekends because I'm like so overstimulated during the week that I need to actually intentionally like be like I need to not do anything on Saturday. But yeah, it's fun and exciting. We're all just really amped up.
Yeah, it's awesome. It comes through in your product. It really does.
Appreciate that. All right. Well, we're at an hour. So again, thank you again for joining. I'm glad you reached out, and it was fun. It's cool to hear the other perspective that we've only been experienced through the product so far, but
it's great talking to you guys. I really enjoyed it. We'll have to get together sometime.
Yeah.
Well, I will definitely have you on again. Yeah, this is cool.